Hi there, this is Sherry Hayes with MomDelights.com. I'm the mom of 15 kids, been homeschooling for about 30 years, and I've been talking a lot of videos about Charlotte Mason for real moms, how we can use the Charlotte Mason method in a real world with real kids, okay? And I think I've pretty much touched on just about every aspect of Charlotte Mason that I could think of. I'm sure there are some things I missed. I'd like to do a wrap-up today, and I'd like to say that if you have never tried it, if you've been afraid to step out of the curriculum package box, the Charlotte Mason method is a great way to start. It was part of the beginning for me, and it's kind of grown and expanded, but I think that it's the best way. Not only do you become enthused about having more freedom, but you have more beauty and more refinement to your homeschooling. So I think it'll bless you. And I'd like to specifically talk about the ways that the Charlotte Mason method can set you free. Number one, there is very little planning involved, especially if you have a lot of little kids. Basically, you could just get a living book, and especially if you use my lesson books, the lesson books that I put out, if you took those and you just use those, you would be able to take just a living book or a McGuffey's reader and use her method and just take off, and you wouldn't have to plan every day. I know that planning is a lot of big stuff. People like to take and they like to plan out their whole year and everything, and every time I try it, it never works. I'm just being honest here. I'm an honest mom. And because, I'm a real creative person, like I have two sides, like I have this really creative flower girl, and over here I have Madame Dabrowska, please, darling, you must sit still. You must do X, Y, and Z. Okay, so I'm like that too, all right? So I have to kind of have both sides working, and so I have these huge, amazing plans, and I'm going to be like, at 6:30 and at 7:30 and at 8:30 and at 9 o'clock. And I'm not in, that never works for me, because the flower girl comes and she says, oh, but I want to experience the moment. And so I just get all messed up. So anyway, but with the Charlotte Mason method, you can still have structure, but you don't have to plan all the time. Okay, you can have a stack of real books. Real living books you're gonna read that year, and then as you read them, then you're gonna branch off and do all kinds of weird things. Like when we read Rolf and the Vikings boat, we go, oh wow, what's a longboat? How come well, what's this and what's that? So then we had to go explore all the time, all the way through the book. And so we had structure of the book, kept us, in a general direction, but we went crazy everywhere else, which I love. Okay, that's part of the reason I love homeschooling, and I love Charlotte Mason. So, but there's very little planning, so that's great. You don't have to teach each subject separately. Now, in the ultimate Charlotte Mason world, you don't have to actually teach a formal grammar until your students are able to pretty much read and write pretty well. The reason being is how, when you do the dictations and you take this passage that you're going to do the dictation on and you explain all of the punctuation and the capitalization and the commas and everything, right? So that when they start to write, and especially if they've been reading whole paragraphs and speaking back whole paragraphs to you and then narrating whole paragraphs, by the time they've done that for so long, their spelling is automatically good, their grammar is automatically good, and so you don't really have to teach those as separate subjects, okay? Also, if you're using historical novels, or if you're using, a nonfiction that is actually very interesting, you could cover history and science without ever cracking a history or science book, although you would probably need to use them as reference materials, because as you go along you're going to have questions. But anyway, but if you just want, there you go. Now you've got all of your grammar and spelling and composition and literature and history and science. You've got it all covered, and all you did was use real living books. Now there are actually free things online that do this and kind of have it set up. There's Ambleside online. There's Tapestry of Grace. That's not free. You have to pay for that, but it pretty much covers the same thing. There are all kinds of other shall we say, curriculum choices that follow the Charlotte Mason idea. And you could definitely do that if you wanted to pay for it or use the free one. But pretty much, if you just wanted to go out on your own and just start out with living books and put all these little elements we've been talking about together, you've got a curriculum that covers everything. So you don't, and actually that's the more natural way to learn, isn't it? Because you probably remember how to put that comma in there better if it's like from a real book and you had to use it in a real paragraph, rather than learning it as just a little bit of memory, and then it's like this detached piece of information that floats around in your mind. It doesn't have any, you don't have any place to put it, okay? I like to put it in the context of something that I actually use, don't you? Okay, so that's another way it sets you free. You can teach children at different levels at the same time, because if you have a living book, you can be reading this living book to all of the children. Some of your little kids are going to sit there maybe for the first 5 or 10 minutes, and then they'll probably go play. Or you might want to have toys, quiet toys there for them. Say, here's some clay, here's some coloring materials. They can sit there, they can do their thing, but they're catching stuff. They're catching more than you realize. Then you're reading the book to the entire group. Some you will require a written narration afterwards. Others you will require an oral narration. Some you'll just say, did you like it? Well, do you remember the guy's name? If they're little. And then also, when you do your copy work, you can pick a whole paragraph and have the little kids just copy maybe the first couple of words or the first sentence, and then the middle kids a little bit more, and then the older kids the whole paragraph. Then when you do your dictations, you can just tailor it the same way, and so everybody's using the same book, right? And when you go off on your little tangents, or you're doing your notebooking pages or your projects, whatever, then you can do the same thing, but just make it on a different level for each child. And so it really simplifies the lives of a mom that has lots of kids to work with, okay? So that's a way it sets you free, which was really a boon for me. Let me tell you something. I mean, most of my kids are an average of 19 months apart. So some were only like 14 months and others were 22 months or 24. But, you know, in there, the average is 19 months apart. So I had them boom, boom, boom. So when I had little kids, I had a whole bunch of little kids. And then I kept having more kids. So I had like middle school, and then I had high school, and I still had infants. And so I had to learn how to have a method in place to where everyone was being enthused and encouraged and hitting the basics, but it wasn't driving me crazy. So that's what I did. Okay, your writing, and here's another thing, your writing and your correcting are at a minimum. Now, this is because basically it's a lot of self-teaching. I don't know if that's a good word, because I know that's associated with kids sitting there and totally doing independent work. And that can happen too with this method. But you don't have to do a lot of correcting, except maybe the narrations, but the dictations, I mean, they can correct themselves, right? And so there's not a lot of writing correcting on your part. Pretty much everybody's doing the same thing. You're just making sure that everybody's engaged, pretty much. So you don't have a lot of the book work associated, like when you have a lot of worksheets or workbook pages to make sure they've done it correctly. Or this isn't really that labor intensive that way. Okay, also, this is my favorite part. Okay, you, the mom, get to enjoy good literature, art, music, and nature along with your kids. Because when you're reading, it's an excuse to read a book, okay? My life is so busy that I don't have time to read novels. I have time for the word, and I have time for the nonfiction parts of my life to take care of, you know, how to put a new sink in the bathroom and stuff like that. Okay, but I don't have time for just reading for enjoyment. When I read aloud to my kids, I mean, I love that part of my life, okay? When we look at new art, good art, or we're creating art, or we're listening to excellent music, or we go on nature walks, that feeds me. So I'm getting fed along with my children. That is like my favorite part of the Charlotte Mason method. So besides this, the actual teaching you do every day can be short and sweet. Okay, when you aren't having everybody doing a lot of different things in different ways all at the same time, that can take up a lot of time, okay? Especially if everybody's on a different subject like that. Like there are different levels of science, different levels of history, and they're doing all, it's crazy. But if you can keep everybody flowing in the same direction as far as like your cores of history and science, and then pulling everything around that, you don't have to do a lot of teaching every day. It makes it so nice. Okay, so this has to be happiness, right? I hope you'll take the plunge, and I hope that if you've been trying to do Charlotte Mason and this method has been driving you crazy and you just feel like a failure every day, I want you to know that your kids will turn out okay. It's the fishes and the loaves. You give to God what you have and He blesses it and He'll work it in their lives. And so just trust Him with the outcome and live every day and do the best you can and try to walk with God and listen to the Holy Spirit. And you know what? It's going to be okay. Well, you have a blessed day. Bye-bye.